Hey guys, I'm Cherry and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be looking at the respiratory system. But first, I'd just like to quickly recap the circulatory system, which I looked at in my previous video. So the circulatory system transports nutrients and oxygen to the body cells and takes carbon dioxide and other waste products away from them and back to the heart. This system is made up of the heart, arteries and veins, which are blood vessels, and the blood. The heart pumps the blood all around the body, and the arteries take that oxygen-rich blood away from the heart and towards the body cells. At those cells, oxygen is used in cellular respiration. Then the veins take the deoxygenated blood away from the cells and back towards the heart. And finally, your blood is what actually carries all of those nutrients and oxygen. If you would like to know more about this system, please go check out my previous video if you haven't already, and I'll leave the link to that down below, so make sure you watch that as well. So now there are just a few questions that I have for you guys as you're watching the video. Why do we actually need oxygen? What would happen if we stopped breathing? How many times does the average adult breathe in a day? And finally, why is the right lung bigger than the left? So these are just a few things for you guys to think about as you're watching this, and I'm sure that by the end of this, you'll be able to answer these questions very confidently. So now the time that you guys have all been waiting for. What is the respiratory system? Your respiratory or pulmonary system is made up of organs that work together to take oxygen into and carbon dioxide out of your body. Oxygen is vital for the cells to create energy and operate properly. And without oxygen for even just 4 minutes, your cells will start to die. So it's really, really important that you keep breathing. This system works alongside the circulatory system, which takes that oxygen to each body cell, as I explained in a previous slide. Did you know that most early organisms did not actually have a circulatory and respiratory system like we do? In fact, they would get all of their oxygen supply through diffusion, which is the movement of substances from an area of high density to low density. An example of this is if I just have some normal tap water and I drop a couple of drops of blue food dye into it, you can quickly see that the food dye moves from areas of higher density to lower density as it spreads through the glass. So moving on, the respiratory system is made up of the upper and lower respiratory systems. So the upper respiratory tract includes the nasal cavity, the pharynx and larynx, and your larynx is your voice box. And the lower respiratory tract includes the trachea, the primary bronchi, and your lungs. Today, we're mainly going to be looking at the lower respiratory system. Now we'll move on to the trachea. So the trachea is a tube-like structure within the neck and upper chest, and it is situated just in front of the esophagus or your food pipe. It carries the air from your nose and mouth to your lungs and vice versa. For most people, your trachea is about 10 centimeters long and about 2.5 centimeters wide in diameter, which is roughly the same width diameter as this normal 20-cent Australian coin. So your trachea is made up of roughly 20 reinforced cartilage rings, and these make sure that the walls of the trachea are extremely strong. This is super important to make sure that food in the esophagus does not push up against that trachea and block your airways. It's also really important to make sure that the trachea does not collapse under the pressure of the air that's moving in and out of your body. The trachea connects your larynx or your voice box to the bronchi, which take the oxygen into your lungs. Mucus and cilia line your tracheal walls, and these ensure that microorganisms and other debris do not enter the lungs. They also humidify the air before it enters your lungs. Any waste that is attracted by the mucus and cilia is then expelled when a person sneezes or coughs. Next, we'll move on to the lungs. So your lungs are a pair of cone-shaped organs in which gas exchange occurs. After the trachea breaks into the bronchi, they further break into bronchiole. And you may notice here that the inside of the lungs kind of look like upside down trees. So your right lung actually has 3 lobes, which are small compartments within the lungs, while the left lung only has 2, and this is to make space for your heart. This is actually why the right lung is bigger than the left. So the bronchiole further divide into alveoli, which are small air sacs at the end of the bronchiole. And this is exactly where gas exchange takes place. So around each alveolus is a network of capillaries. And here you can see a diagram of one of the alveolus, and you can see that a capillary is coming from the heart, and it dumps all of its carbon dioxide and takes in oxygen. And this is exactly what gas exchange is. So once the gas exchange has occurred, the pulmonary vein can take that oxygenated blood back to the heart, and the carbon dioxide can be breathed out. Moving on, we'll now look at the journey of oxygen within the body. So when we breathe in, or inhalation, the air enters through our nose and mouth. Fun fact, the average adult breathes in about 17,000 times a day. The air then moves down the throat and past the larynx and pharynx and into the trachea. The trachea breaks into the bronchi, which enter the lungs, and then those bronchi further break into bronchiole. At the end of each bronchiole are alveoli, which are surrounded by capillaries. Here, gas exchange occurs and oxygen goes into the bloodstream. That oxygenated blood makes its way to the heart through the pulmonary vein, and then the heart pumps out that blood to the body, and through arteries and capillaries, the oxygenated blood makes its way to the cells. And at the cells, gas exchange occurs once again, the oxygen goes into the cells, and the cells use that oxygen for cellular respiration. So now we have the journey of carbon dioxide in the body. So CO2, or carbon dioxide, is a byproduct of cellular respiration. And it goes back into the capillaries, which join together to form veins, and these veins take your deoxygenated blood back to the heart. The pulmonary artery takes this blood from your heart to the lungs so it can be oxygenated. At the lungs, gas exchange occurs and carbon dioxide is taken into the lungs and oxygen is taken into the bloodstream. Finally, that CO2 can make its way back up the trachea and can be breathed out by the nasal cavity or the mouth, which is also called exhalation. Finally, we'll move on to the respiratory system diseases. So there are two types of diseases related to the respiratory system: infections and chronic diseases. So firstly, we'll look at infections, which are caused by bacteria and viruses and can be easily transmitted. Examples of respiratory infections include pneumonia and COVID-19. And in both of these infections, your alveoli will tend to swell up and fill with liquids. This means that gas exchange cannot occur. If the gas exchange cannot occur and the cells do not receive that vital oxygen, they will begin to die, and this could also lead to your death. Moving on to chronic diseases, which are long-lasting and have persistent effects. Examples of chronic diseases include asthma, which causes your airways to swell up, meaning that the oxygen and the air can't pass through, and this can be further triggered by allergens such as pollen and dust. And another example is lung cancer, which interferes with the normal functions of your lungs, and this can be caused by smoking cigarettes. And finally, we'll just look back at the questions that I asked you guys at the start of the video. So I hope that you guys can answer these now and that you've learned something new about the respiratory system. If you did and you liked this video, please go down and like and comment, and please subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching, and bye for now.